Session 48. Good evening. After our impromptu session the other evening, I did not know whether or not you would be waiting for me tonight, after the extra typing that was involved. Rob said, I have that typing all done. Seth said, Congratulations. Actually, I had intended to give you the evening off. However, we will have a short session. Unless, of course, you would prefer an evening off, in which case you certainly deserve it. Rob said, No, we are okay. Seth said, The evening is extremely enjoyable. And after having a total of 2 witnesses in one evening, this seems like a very intimate and peaceful session. Your experience this evening represents a journey, and I offer you my congratulations. As time passes, you will be able to maintain durability, as far as such journeys are concerned. We are only at the threshold. In cases such as these, when durability can be maintained, by all means attempt to speak to any persons that you meet. As in this case, you saw the girl at the window, and also asked them to write you at your home address. Rob asked, Why didn't I see the girl's face? Seth said, It will take some time before you will be able to maintain such an experience long enough to make such contact. But if possible, give your own name and address, and also ask that whoever you meet write to you. This of course will aid in validity. You saw the back of the girl's head simply because the girl was standing with her back to you. Had you been able to speak to her, it is probable that she would have turned. Whether or not you were physically assembled when you saw the girl, I do not know. There are many complications here. Journey of your own essence must be achieved first. Of course, there are different ways in which such journey occurs. In some instances, the physical body stays in its original location, and the personality essence moves through camouflage space and time. That is, the personality essence realizes that space and time are merely camouflages, is therefore free to behave accordingly. In this instance of traveling by personality essence, any contact would be telepathic, and a potential observer would see nothing, using the outer senses alone. Rob asked, Wouldn't such an occurrence frighten the observer or recipient? Seth said, Not in the instance mentioned. Another method is somewhat more complicated and involves a diffusion of energies. A partially visible secondary camouflage body appearing in a new location, while the original body remains in its original position. In this case, the body would appear visible on the bed, while another, identical body would appear in the new location to which the personality essence had traveled. In this case, a potential observer would see what would appear to be an ordinary physical being. Conversation could then be carried on. There are gradations in the degree of materialization here, in that the secondary body would be absolutely normal appearing in all respects, or could be less so, according to the ability of the traveler. You have done very well this evening. Rob asked, Can you tell us anything about the girl I saw? They said the girl was merely a secretary, standing by the window and on her way to another office. Rob asked, Did I have the location of the office correct? They said, You did. Each time you practice with the use of psychological time, you add to your abilities, though results may not always be immediate. There is conditioning involved here, as with anything else, but this represents one of your very highest points so far, and I am certain that you will improve. You show a good deal of ability along this line, and possess an inner willingness to experiment. That will stand you in very good stead. Rob asked, Is it possible to pick the places I will visit? They said, It is possible to pick the places you will visit, whether or not you can achieve such purposeful visits at this time. I do not know. However, you can most certainly try. You are further along than even I had imagined, and so it is possible that such purposeful visits are within your abilities now. At all such occasions, try to establish some kind of contact if possible, but do not be discouraged if this is not achieved at once. Your abilities and rubrics, of course, do vary, as is nature, and it is possible that you may be extremely gifted in this particular fashion. I suggest that you take your break. In such experiments, when you attempt purposeful visits, then choose, of course, people with whom you are familiar and in rapport, so that if you materialize fully, they will recognize you as a friend and follow whatever instructions you are able to give them. Even if you are unable to give them any instructions at all, if you materialize, they would of course recognize you and write you, whether or not any instructions were given. This is a good point to remember. For the future, keep still another possibility in mind, that of picking up an object from the location to which you have traveled, and bringing it back with you as proof. This is difficult in the extreme, but it is far from impossible. The reason that these things are done so infrequently is because the personality essence finds itself so unable to give up belief in camouflage time and space. You must be convinced deeply not only that such feats are possible, but that you can achieve them. And then you must also train yourself to perfect your own abilities. Failure can lie in any of these lines. A sort of suspension of what you might call logic is necessary before such feats can be performed well enough for there to be a scientific proof, definite enough to be accepted. You must make an emotional and psychic leap, and then you can look backward and see your connective bridges. Then you can point these out to others. This is extremely important. There must always be pioneers. There will be gradations and variations that you will find most interesting. If, in such travelings, you find yourself in a strange location, then look for signs or landmarks. At first, the very uniqueness of such experiences will tend to make you forget. However, an accurate description of a foreign city which you have never visited before would be, of course, invaluable. If you hear people talking, remember to listen to what they are discussing and the language in which they speak. Now, I am talking of probability rather than immediate possibility. It is not impossible, however, at all to travel seamlessly through time as well as space. I say seamlessly because this traveling really has little to do with transportation as such. Since both space and time are camouflages, to speak of traveling through land is basically meaningless. What is involved here is a transformation of energy. And on your plane, an extension of personality essence that permits an extension of perception. I will make this clear at a later date. The transportation is apparent only. In basic terms, as far as your plane is concerned, the body does appear in a new location, but it does not travel between 2 points, as a vehicle might do. There is a transformation of energy from one location simultaneously to another location. Time as you know it is simply ignored as an element here. It takes no time for you to journey, using the inner senses. From Elmira to New York, you are simply operating in a different dimension. Psychological time, as I have said often, comes extremely close to the climate in which I have my existence, and which you exist in. But unconsciously, experience with psychological time and a continuous familiarity with it will tell you more than words can about the basic realities of all existence. Date, at first, feels like psychological time. There is a period when you retain the idea of camouflage time, before full freedom enters in, and a small lapse before orientation is possible. The use of psychological time will make the experience of death much less frightening. You will already have learned to recognize the spacious present for what it is, and the conscious ego will not be so bewildered and confused by the sudden perception that is involved. Just before the experience of that timelessness, or the spacious present, begins to be perceived, it is because the ego is tied to its past that it sees the past simply rise up. It has the ability to see what is coming, so to speak. But while the frightened ego is still in control, it chooses to see only a portion of what is possible, and before the point of death, it usually chooses to hide in the past. I suggest that you take your break. I have said that this will be a brief session. Until you learn, and you are learning, to replenish your psychic energies. Such experiences as the one you had this evening will leave you with a certain weariness. This is not necessary, but in the beginning, I am afraid it is natural. You are using abilities that you have not used before, and it will take some getting used to. The extra session that we had was probably not too good of an idea from my standpoint, although for various reasons I did want to call it. However, it is not my intention to wear you out, and when I do call an unscheduled session for any reason, then I will compensate by either making the next session shorter or according to the length of unscheduled session. Dispense with the following one. A note here about Robert. He is in good shape. The fact that he has manuscripts out always makes him impatient, and particularly this time of year, affects his chemical balance. He is learning to control this to some extent, for which you should be grateful. I mention this merely to lessen his worries on the subject. I am almost pleased with your progress, Joseph, and I expect it to continue. Perhaps someday you will bring a handful of sand back from a Florida beach, not enough to make a beach of your own, perhaps, but a handful in the middle of your living room table would be quite an achievement. I am merely trying out something new for a few minutes with Ruber, and it seems to be working well. Rob said, I was wondering. They said, I anticipate an excellent and full session. Wednesday. I do not on any account want to overburden you with extra note-taking, especially since your own experiments will necessitate further need for records. Rob asked, was my swollen hand earlier this evening a sign that I would thank you? They said, shortly after your dinner I came briefly, not sure whether or not I would even hold this session, in light of the extra one. We still have much material to be covered. However, this evening I did want to speak about your own experience and to offer my comments and encouragement. By all means, get your vitamins. Incidentally, and I would suggest that you take them on a regular everyday basis. You are using, both of you, much energy in these sessions. You are learning to use other energy than your own. Nevertheless, this takes time also, and the vitamins will help. They said, I must admit that I did feel somewhat guilty, imposing on you on an off night. Nevertheless, gains were made, and I will let you off early this evening. The energy that you use in these sessions and in your own experiments need not be your own energy. You are already drawing upon other reservoirs, but this too is an ability in which you are being trained. There is an almost regeneration that will occur, and that is occurring now, to some degree. I suggest that we end the session. All in all, we will come out a little ahead with this session and the unscheduled one.